It's 3:17 in the morning, and you're awake. Not because someone called, not because the baby cried, not because of a nightmare. You're awake because your brain won't stop. It starts with that email you forgot to send, then the conversation you need to have with your boss, then the bill you meant to pay, then the thing you promised your friend 3 weeks ago, then the project you said you'd start, then the person you need to call back, then the thing you need to buy, then the thing you need to fix, then the thing you need to figure out. And before you know it, your mind is a pinball machine, bouncing from one unfinished obligation to another, never landing, never resting, just spinning. Here's what nobody tells you. This isn't a productivity problem. This isn't a time management problem. This isn't even really a stress problem. This is a psychological survival problem. Your brain was designed for a world where the threats were immediate and physical. A predator in the bushes, a rival at the watering hole, a storm on the horizon. Your mind evolved to remember unfinished threats, to keep them active, to make sure you didn't forget the thing that might kill you. But nobody told your brain that the modern world doesn't work like that anymore. Now the threats are invisible, they're ambiguous, they're endless, and your brain treats every unanswered email, every vague commitment, every half-formed intention like a potential predator. So it keeps them all active, all at once, all the time. And you wonder why you're exhausted. There's a term for this. Psychologists call it open loops. Every commitment you've made that hasn't been completed, every agreement you haven't fulfilled, every intention you haven't acted on, every piece of information you haven't decided what to do with. Your brain holds on to these, obsessively, because that's what brains do. The average person in modern society is carrying dozens, sometimes hundreds of these open loops in their mind at any given moment. Not on paper, not in a system, just floating in their head, taking up space, draining energy, creating what researchers now call attention residue. And here's the cruelest part. You think you're bad at focusing. You think you have ADHD. You think you need more discipline. You think you need better habits. You think you need another app. But the real reason you can't focus is that your brain is already full. This documentary isn't about getting more done. It's not about being more productive. It's not about hustling harder or optimizing your morning routine. This is about something much deeper. This is about getting your mind back. Because somewhere along the way, between the notifications and the obligations and the infinite scroll of modern life, you stopped being fully present. You stopped being fully here. You stopped being fully you. And the person who finally fixes this doesn't do it by trying harder. They do it by understanding something fundamental about how the human mind actually works. Something that most people never learn. Something that changes everything. Welcome. Soft music swells, then fades. Chapter 1, the GHOSDS in your head. Gentle, contemplative music. Meet Marcus. Marcus is 34. He has a good job, a decent apartment, a few close friends. On paper, his life looks fine. But Marcus hasn't slept through the night in 3 years. It's Tuesday morning, 9:47 a.m. Marcus is sitting in a meeting. His boss is talking about quarterly projections. The numbers are on the screen. Everyone is nodding. But Marcus isn't really there. He's thinking about the text he needs to send his sister about their mother's birthday. He's thinking about whether he remembered to turn off the stove. He's thinking about the conversation he needs to have with his roommate about the rent. He's thinking about the doctor's appointment he keeps meaning to schedule. He's thinking about the project deadline that's somehow next week, even though he just started it yesterday. And while he's thinking about all of that, he's also trying to look like he's paying attention to the quarterly projections. The meeting ends. Marcus has no idea what was decided. He nods and smiles and walks back to his desk. He opens his laptop. He stares at his inbox. 147 unread emails. He clicks on one, reads 3 sentences. His phone buzzes. He checks the notification. It's nothing important. But now he's on his phone. He opens Instagram. He scrolls for 4 minutes. He puts the phone down. He looks back at the email. He has no idea what it said. He starts typing a response anyway. This is Marcus's life. Every day, all day. A constant, low-grade state of partial attention, never fully anywhere, always slightly somewhere else. And here's the thing about Marcus. He's not lazy, he's not stupid, he's not unmotivated. He's overwhelmed. Not overwhelmed in the dramatic sense. Not the kind of overwhelm that makes you cry or quit your job or have a breakdown. He's overwhelmed in the quiet sense, the ambient sense. The sense that there's always something he should be doing that he's not doing, something he should have handled that he hasn't handled, something he should have decided that he hasn't decided. And this quiet overwhelm, it never stops. There's a psychological phenomenon that explains exactly what's happening to Marcus. It's called the Zeigarnik Effect, named after Bluma Zeigarnik, a Lithuanian psychologist who noticed something strange in the 1920s. Waiters in a restaurant could remember complex orders perfectly until the order was delivered. The moment the food hit the table, the memory vanished. Unfinished tasks stay in your mind. Finished tasks leave. It sounds simple, almost obvious, but the implications are profound. Your brain is essentially a completion machine. It hates open loops. It can't stand ambiguity. It will keep an unfinished task active in your working memory, sometimes for days, weeks, or months, until you either complete it or make a conscious decision about it. In the ancestral environment, this was a feature, not a bug. If you started building a shelter and didn't finish it, your brain needed to remind you. If you spotted a predator and lost track of it, your brain needed to keep you alert. If you promised to share food with another tribe member, your brain needed to remember, because social survival depended on keeping your word. But now your brain is doing the exact same thing with your Amazon return, with that text you need to send, with the meeting you need to schedule, with the ambiguous project your boss mentioned in passing. Your brain can't tell the difference between a life-threatening unfinished task and a mildly inconvenient unfinished task. To your nervous system, they're all open loops, and open loops demand attention. This is why you can be sitting on a beach on vacation, theoretically relaxed, and suddenly remember that thing you need to do when you get back. Your brain doesn't care that you're on vacation. It cares that the loop is open. Researchers at Florida State University found something remarkable about this. They discovered that unfinished tasks don't just occupy your working memory. They actively degrade your performance on everything else you're trying to do. It's called attention residue. When you switch from one task to another, part of your attention stays with the previous task, especially if that previous task was unfinished. You might physically be in the new meeting, but psychologically you're still processing the last email, still worrying about the last conversation, still carrying the last obligation. And in modern life, almost everything is unfinished. Think about your own mind right now. As you listen to this, there's probably something else nagging at you. Some commitment you haven't fulfilled, some decision you haven't made, some piece of information you haven't processed. That's not a character flaw. That's your brain doing exactly what it evolved to do. The problem isn't you. The problem is that you were never given a system to handle the volume and complexity of modern commitments. Here's where it gets really interesting. Psychologists have found that the Zeigarnik Effect has a dark cousin. It's not just that unfinished tasks stay in your mind. It's that your mind will actively manufacture stress to keep them there. That 3 a.m. wake up? That's not random. That's your brain choosing the quietest moment to surface the things it knows you've been avoiding. When the distractions of the day are gone, your mind finally has your full attention, and it uses that attention to remind you of everything you've been trying not to think about. It's almost cruel, isn't it? The very moment you finally get a chance to rest, your mind decides that's the perfect time to panic. But here's the thing, your brain isn't trying to torture you, it's trying to help you. In its primitive, evolutionary way, it's saying, "Hey, these things are important. You said you'd do them. You need to handle them. I'm going to keep reminding you until you do." The tragedy is that in modern life, this well-intentioned system has become a prison. Most people try to solve this problem by working harder, by pushing through, by grinding longer hours, by drinking more coffee, by downloading another productivity app. But here's the truth that almost nobody understands. You can't outwork a mind that's full. You can't focus harder when your attention is already fragmented across 50 open loops. You can't be present when part of you is always somewhere else. You can't be creative when your cognitive bandwidth is consumed by administrative overhead. The solution isn't to try harder. The solution is to build something that most people have never even considered. You need to build an external brain. Not a metaphor, not a cute phrase. An actual functioning system outside your head that your mind can trust enough to let go. Because here's the paradox at the heart of all of this. The only way to be fully present is to stop trying to remember everything. The only way to be free is to stop carrying it all in your head. And the only way to do that is to build a system your brain actually believes in. But before we get to how, we need to understand something even more fundamental. We need to understand why your mind is such a terrible office. Soft music fades. Chapter 2, The Art of the External Brain. Subtle electronic hum, like a computer booting up. Your brain can hold approximately 4 things in conscious awareness at once. Not 7, not 10, not it depends. 4. This isn't a theory. This is one of the most replicated findings in cognitive psychology. The work of Nelson Cowan at the University of Missouri, building on decades of research into working memory, established something that should fundamentally change how you think about your own mind. Your working memory, the mental space where you hold and manipulate information, is tiny. Think of it like RAM in a computer. Fast, powerful, essential for active processing, but limited. Now here's what most people do. They try to use their RAM as a hard drive. They try to store hundreds of commitments, obligations, ideas, and reminders in a space designed for 4 active items. And then they wonder why their mind feels slow, why they forget things, why they can't focus, why they feel mentally exhausted by noon. It's like trying to run Photoshop on a computer with 4 gigabytes of RAM, while also storing your entire photo library in that same RAM. It doesn't work. Your brain knows this. On some level, it knows it's overloaded, but it doesn't have an alternative, so it keeps trying. It keeps juggling. It keeps reminding you of things at 3 a.m. because that's the only strategy it has. There's a concept in psychology called cognitive offloading. It's the process of moving information out of your head and into the external world. Writing a grocery list, setting a calendar reminder, leaving your keys by the door so you don't forget them. These seem like simple strategies, almost trivial, but they're actually profound. When you write something down, you're not just creating a record, you're performing a psychological transaction. You're telling your brain, "I don't need you to remember this anymore, I've handled it. You can let it go." And if your brain believes you, it actually does let it go. The problem is that most people's external systems aren't trustworthy enough for their brains to actually release the information. Think about it. Have you ever written something on a to-do list and then still worried about it? Still thought about it? Still woke up at night remembering it? That's because your brain doesn't trust your list. It knows the list is incomplete. It knows you won't look at it. It knows you'll forget to check it. It knows the item will sit there for weeks undisturbed while you pretend it doesn't exist. So your brain keeps the backup, just in case. This is the architecture of trust, and most people have never built it. A trusted system isn't just a place where you dump information. It's a place where information flows, where it enters, gets processed, gets organized, gets reviewed, and gets acted upon. It's a complete cycle. And here's the counterintuitive part. The more comprehensive your external system is, the more your brain can relax. Most people think they need to simplify their lives, reduce their commitments, do less, and sure, that helps. But the real leverage point isn't doing less, it's trusting more. Trusting that everything you need to remember is somewhere you can find it. Trusting that nothing will fall through the cracks. Trusting that your system will remind you at the right time, in the right place, with the right context. When that trust is established, something remarkable happens. Your brain stops managing and starts creating. It stops worrying and starts solving. It stops remembering and starts imagining. There's a study that illustrates this beautifully. Researchers gave participants a complex task to remember. Half were allowed to write it down, half had to keep it in their heads. The ones who wrote it down performed significantly better on subsequent cognitive tasks. Not because writing things down is magical, but because it freed up mental space. It allowed the brain to stop being a filing cabinet and start being a processor. This is the fundamental shift that most people never make. They keep trying to use their mind as a storage device, and they never build an external system trustworthy enough to take that burden away. But here's where it gets even more interesting. The kind of system you build matters a lot. Most people's systems are actually just collections of partial solutions. A calendar here, a notes app there, some sticky notes on the monitor, a few saved emails, a mental reminder, a text to yourself. These aren't systems, they're debris. A real system has integrity, it has completeness, it has regularity. Everything goes in, everything gets processed, everything gets organized, everything gets reviewed. No exceptions. And this is where most people fail. Not because the system is too complex, but because they never commit to it fully. They capture some things but not others. They organize some things but let others pile up. They review sometimes but skip when life gets busy. And their brain notices. Your brain is watching, constantly, evaluating whether your external system is actually reliable. And if it detects any weakness, any gap, any inconsistency, any untrustworthiness, it will resume its old job of remembering everything itself. Building a trusted external brain isn't about finding the perfect app. It's about building a complete practice. And that practice starts with a single, radical act. The act of capturing everything. Soft music rises and fades. Chapter 3, Capture. Minimal, tense music. There's a drawer in your mind that you've never opened. It's not locked, there's no key. You could open it any time. But you don't. Because you're afraid of what's inside. This drawer contains every commitment you've made that you haven't kept. Every intention you've had that you haven't acted on. Every promise you've made to yourself that you've broken. Every piece of information you've received that you haven't processed. It's not a small drawer. Most people never do a complete inventory of their open loops. They can't. The psychological weight is too much. But the first step to freedom is the step most people refuse to take. You have to open the drawer. You have to look at everything. All of it. This is capture, not just writing down your to-do list, not just making a few notes, not just the big things or the urgent things or the important things. Everything. Every commitment, large or small, every intention, clear or vague, every piece of information that might require action, every thought that says I should, or I need to, or I want to. The email you need to respond to, the call you need to make, the thing you need to buy, the person you need to talk to, the project you need to start, the project you need to finish, the decision you need to make, the information you need to find, the problem you need to solve. All of it out of your head, onto paper or into an app or onto a voice memo or anywhere outside your mind. This sounds simple, it is not. Because capture forces confrontation. Meet Sarah. Sarah is 29, she works in marketing, she's smart, capable, and generally has her life together. At least that's what people think. One Sunday afternoon, Sarah decides to do a complete capture. She's read about this technique. She knows it's supposed to help. She's skeptical, but she's also desperate. She hasn't felt truly relaxed in months. She sits down with a notebook and a pen. She starts writing. At first, it's easy, the obvious stuff, the work deadlines, the appointments, the bills. But then something shifts. As she keeps writing, deeper things start surfacing. The conversation she needs to have with her mother about boundaries. The creative project she abandoned 3 years ago. The friend she hurt and never apologized to. The health concern she's been ignoring. The career path she knows she's on the wrong track of. The list keeps growing. 10 items, 20, 50, 100. Sarah starts to feel something she didn't expect. Shame. Not because any individual item is shameful, but because seeing them all together creates a portrait of someone who isn't handling their life. Someone who says yes to too much. Someone who starts things and doesn't finish. Someone who makes promises and breaks them. The person in the notebook doesn't look like the person Sarah pretends to be. This is why most people never do a complete capture. It's not because they're lazy. It's not because they don't have time. It's because they're afraid of what they'll discover about themselves. The capture process is an act of radical honesty, and radical honesty is painful. But it's also the beginning of something else. Freedom. Here's what happened to Sarah. After the initial wave of shame, something shifted. She kept writing. She got to item 147, 147 open loops, living in her head every day, all the time. And for the first time, she saw them. All of them at once, outside her head, on paper, where she could look at them without her brain having to hold them. It was overwhelming, but it was also clarifying. Because now she could see patterns. She could see that half her stress came from 12 items that she'd been avoiding for months. She could see that another quarter came from vague commitments she'd never actually agreed to. She could see that some things weren't even hers to handle. The notebook didn't just contain her obligations. It contained her self-deception. This is the power of capture. Not because writing things down is magical, but because externalization creates distance. It allows you to see your own mind from the outside, to observe your patterns, to notice what you've been too close to notice. When everything is in your head, it's all tangled together. The urgent and the trivial, the important and the imaginary, the real commitments and the vague anxieties. Capture separates them. It creates space between you and your obligations, and in that space, you can finally think clearly. But capture isn't a one-time event. Most people treat it like a cleanse. Something you do once, feel good about, and then go back to your old habits. That doesn't work. Capture is a practice, a habit, a way of being in the world. It means having a capture tool with you at all times. A notebook in your pocket, an app on your phone, a voice recorder in your car, something, anything, always. Because ideas don't schedule appointments. Commitments don't arrive during business hours. The thing you need to remember doesn't wait until you're sitting at your desk with your productivity system open. It comes to you in the shower, in the car, in the middle of a conversation, at 2 a.m. And if you don't capture it immediately, your brain will. Your brain will hold on to it. Add it to the pile, keep it active, keep it spinning, keep it consuming your precious mental energy. The capture habit is a negotiation with your own mind. You're saying, I hear you, I see this, I acknowledge it, and I promise I will handle it, not right now, but soon, at the right time, in the right way. You don't need to keep reminding me. I've got it. And if your brain believes you, it will stop reminding you. But it only believes you if the capture is complete, if nothing slips through, if every loop gets closed or captured. One missed item is all it takes for your brain to lose trust, to resume its old habits, to start waking you up at night again. This is why capture is both the simplest and the hardest part of the entire system. Simple because all you have to do is write things down. Hard because you have to write everything down. And here's the deeper truth. Capture isn't just about productivity, it's about psychological integrity. Every uncaptured commitment is a small lie you tell yourself, a small pretense that you'll remember, a small fantasy that you'll handle it later, a small avoidance of the reality that you can't hold it all. Capture is the practice of stopping the lies. It's the practice of admitting moment by moment that you need help, that you can't do it alone, that your mind isn't enough. And that admission is the beginning of real power. Because once everything is captured, something remarkable becomes possible. You can finally start clarifying what it all means. Soft music transitions. Chapter 4, Clarify. Dark, introspective music. There's an email in your inbox right now that's been there for 3 weeks. You know the one. You've opened it 17 times, you've read it. You know what it says, you know what it requires. But you haven't responded. Why? Most people think it's because they're busy, because they have too much to do, because they'll get to it eventually. But that's not the real reason. The real reason is that you haven't decided what this email actually is. Is it something you need to do, something you need to delegate, something you need to respond to, something you need to file, something you need to delete? You haven't clarified it, so it sits there in the ambiguous middle space, not quite trash, not quite a task, not quite reference, just unresolved. And your brain hates unresolved. This is the clarifying stage, and it's where most people get stuck. Because clarification isn't administrative, it's emotional. Every item you capture requires a decision, and decisions are exhausting. Decisions require confronting reality. Decisions require commitment. Decisions require the risk of being wrong. So most people avoid them. They let things pile up in the ambiguous space, the I'll figure it out later space, the I need to think about it space. But later never comes, and the thinking never happens, and the pile grows, and the stress compounds. There's a concept in psychology called implementation intention. It sounds technical, but it's actually simple. It's the difference between I need to exercise more And I will go to the gym on Tuesday at 6 p.m. The first is a vague intention. The second is a specific commitment. And research shows that specific commitments are dramatically more likely to happen. Not because people who make specific commitments are more disciplined, but because specificity removes ambiguity, and ambiguity is the enemy of action. Every unclear item in your life is consuming mental energy, not because it's hard, but because it's undefined. Here's the clarifying process. You take each captured item, one by one, and you ask a simple question. What is this? Not what do I want this to be, not what should this be. What is it? Is it actionable, yes or no? If no, it's either trash, reference, or something for someday. If yes, you ask another question. What's the next action? This question is deceptively simple and profoundly powerful. Because most people never ask it. They look at a project like fix the house and they think that's clear enough, but it's not. Fix the house isn't an action, it's a vague cloud of potential actions. The next action might be call contractor for estimate. It might be buy paint at hardware store. It might be measure the room. But until you define the next action, nothing happens. And here's the psychological reason why. Your brain doesn't respond to projects, it responds to actions. A project is an outcome, it's a future state. It's abstract. Your brain can't execute abstract concepts. But an action is concrete, it's physical, it's something you could do right now if you chose to. Call contractor is something you could do. Fix the house is something you can't. This distinction seems trivial, it's not. Because every undefined project is an open loop, and every open loop is consuming your mental energy. There's a rule that changes everything. The 2-minute rule. If an action takes less than 2 minutes, do it now. Not later, not after you organize it, not after you put it on a list. Now. This rule seems arbitrary, it's not. 2 minutes is the threshold where the administrative cost of tracking an item exceeds the cost of just doing it. It takes about 2 minutes to write something down, put it in your system, review it later, and eventually do it. So if the thing itself takes less than 2 minutes, just do it. But here's the deeper psychology. The 2-minute rule isn't about efficiency, it's about momentum. Every small completion releases dopamine. Every quick win builds confidence. Every 2-minute action proves to yourself that you're someone who handles things. And that identity shift is everything. Most people think they're procrastinating because they're lazy. They're not. They're procrastinating because they haven't defined the action clearly enough to make it feel possible. Write book feels impossible. Write 200 words feels possible. Get in shape feels impossible. Do 10 push-ups feels possible. Fix relationship feels impossible. Send text saying I'm thinking of you feels possible. Clarification is the process of making the impossible feel possible. But there's another layer to this. Clarification forces you to confront what you're actually willing to do. When you look at an item and ask, what's the next action? Sometimes the answer is, I don't want to do this. And that's valuable information. Because if you don't want to do it, why is it on your list? Maybe it's not actually your responsibility. Maybe you agreed to it out of guilt. Maybe you inherited it from someone else. Maybe you thought you should want it, but you don't. Clarification reveals the gap between your real priorities and your imagined priorities. Between who you think you are and who you actually are. This is why clarification is emotionally hard. It's not just about organizing tasks. It's about confronting your own choices, your own commitments, your own avoidance. Every item you clarify is a small mirror, and sometimes you don't like what you see. But the alternative is worse. The alternative is a life full of vague obligations you never agreed to, half-formed intentions you never acted on, projects you never started, conversations you never had. A life of ambient stress from things you can't even name. Clarification is the process of naming them. One by one, item by item, decision by decision. It's not fun, it's not easy, but it's the only way through. Because once everything is clarified, once every item has a clear next action or a clear destination, something remarkable happens. You're ready to organize. Soft music transitions. Chapter 5, Organize. Building architectural music. Most organization systems fail for the same reason most diets fail. They're designed for perfection, not psychology. They assume you'll always be motivated. They assume you'll always have time. They assume you'll always follow the rules. And when you don't, which you won't, they collapse. The key to a sustainable organization system isn't complexity, it's trust. Your brain needs to believe that the system will actually remind you of things at the right time, that nothing will get lost, that everything is where it should be. If your brain doesn't believe this, it will keep remembering everything itself, and you're back to square one. So what does a trustworthy system look like? It has buckets. Not physical buckets, mental buckets, categories, containers that hold different types of commitments. And each bucket serves a different psychological function. The first bucket is your calendar. This is for time-specific commitments, appointments, deadlines, events, things that happen at a specific time on a specific day. The calendar is sacred. If it's on your calendar, it happens. If it's not on your calendar, it doesn't exist in time. Most people use their calendar wrong. They put some things on it but not others. They treat it as optional. They double book. They forget to check it. A trusted calendar is non-negotiable. It's the spine of your system. The second bucket is your next actions list. These are the things you could do right now if you chose to. The specific physical actions you clarified in the previous step. But here's the key. They're organized by context. Not by priority, not by project, by context. Because you can't make calls when you're in a meeting. You can't run errands when you're at home. You can't do computer work when you don't have your laptop. Context is reality. So you have a list for calls to make, a list for errands to run, a list for computer work, a list for home tasks, a list for things to discuss with your boss. When you find yourself with a phone and 5 minutes, you check your calls list. When you're at the grocery store, you check your errands list. When you're at your desk with energy and focus, you check your computer work list. This seems simple, but it eliminates one of the biggest sources of decision fatigue. The question isn't, what should I do? The question is, what can I do right now in this context with this energy? The third bucket is your projects list. A project is anything that requires more than one action to complete. Most people dramatically underestimate how many projects they have active at any given time. They think they have 5 or 6. They actually have 30 or 40. And each one is an open loop. Each one is consuming mental energy. Each one is creating ambient stress. The projects list is where you keep track of all these outcomes, not the actions, the outcomes. Fix the house, launch the website, plan the vacation, improve relationship with dad. Each project should have a clear desired outcome, a picture of what done looks like. Because if you don't know what done looks like, you'll never know when you've arrived. The fourth bucket is your someday maybe list. This is where dreams go to live. Not to die, to live. Most people have dreams they never write down. Learn French, write a novel, start a business, travel to Japan, fix their marriage. These dreams float around in the back of their mind, creating a vague sense of disappointment, a feeling that they're not living up to their potential. The someday maybe list gives these dreams a home. It says, I see you, I honor you, I'm not ready for you right now, but I haven't forgotten you. This is psychologically crucial. Because unacknowledged dreams don't go away. They fester, they create regret, they whisper in the background of your life. But acknowledged dreams, they wait patiently in their designated space, not forgotten, just deferred. And sometimes, when the time is right, you move them from someday maybe into active projects. And sometimes, when you review them honestly, you realize you don't actually want them anymore, and you let them go. Either way, they're no longer ghosts in your head. The fifth bucket is your reference system. This is for information you might need later. Notes, documents, ideas, resources. Most people's reference system is chaos. Files scattered across devices, notes in 17 apps, important documents lost in email threads. A trusted reference system means you can find anything in under 60 seconds. Because if it takes longer than that, you won't look for it, you'll just try to remember it, and we're back to using your brain as a storage device. These 5 buckets, calendar, next actions, projects, someday maybe, reference, form the architecture of a trusted system. But buckets alone aren't enough. You also need a process, a regular rhythm of reviewing and updating, because a system that isn't maintained quickly becomes untrustworthy. And the most important review happens weekly. Soft music transitions. Chapter 6, Reflect. Slow, contemplative music. Sunday evening, 7 p.m. The week is ending. A new one is about to begin. Most people spend this time scrolling, watching something, having a drink, trying to forget the week that was and delay the week that will be. But there's another way to spend Sunday evening. A way that's harder, more confronting, more honest. The weekly review. This is where most people abandon the system. Not because they don't have time, not because they don't see the value. Because it's emotionally hard. The weekly review forces you to confront the gap between who you said you'd be and who you actually were. Between what you intended to do and what you actually did. Between the person in your plans and the person in your reality. Here's what a real weekly review looks like. You sit down with your system, all of it, calendar, next actions, projects, someday maybe. You look at the past week, what got done, what didn't, what got captured, what got missed. You look at the week ahead, what's coming, what needs preparation, what conversations need to happen, what decisions need to be made. You look at your projects, are they moving, are they stalled, do they still matter, are there new ones that need to be added? You look at your someday maybe list, is anything ready to become active, is anything ready to be let go? You look at your next actions. Are they still relevant? Are they still clear? Are there new ones that need to be defined? You look at your calendar. Is it accurate? Are there conflicts? Are there gaps that need to be filled? This takes time, real time, not 5 minutes, not while watching TV. 30 minutes, an hour, maybe 2. And during this time, you're not just organizing, you're reflecting. You're asking yourself the hard questions. Am I spending my time on what actually matters? Am I avoiding something I need to face? Am I overcommitted, undercommitted, committed to the wrong things? Who am I becoming through my choices? These are existential questions. And the weekly review is existential maintenance. It's the regular recalibration of your life, the course correction, the moment when you look up from the daily grind and ask, am I going where I want to go? Most people never do this. They live week to week in reactive mode, responding to whatever comes in, never stepping back, never looking at the bigger picture, never asking if their daily actions align with their deeper values. And then they wake up one day and wonder where the years went. The weekly review prevents this. Not perfectly, not completely, but significantly. It creates a regular rhythm of self-confrontation and self-correction. It forces you to look at your life as a whole, not just the urgent, not just the immediate, but the important, the meaningful, the slowly unfolding. But here's the thing about the weekly review. It's not just about what you discover, it's about what you do with what you discover. If you review your week and see that you didn't make progress on anything important, you have a choice. You can beat yourself up, most people do. Or you can get curious. Why didn't I make progress? Was I overcommitted? Was I avoiding something? Was I unclear about what the next action was? Was I distracted? Was I exhausted? Curiosity leads to insight. Insight leads to adjustment. Adjustment leads to different results. Shame leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to more of the same. The weekly review is a practice of compassionate self-assessment. Not judgment, assessment. Here's where I am. Here's where I said I'd be. What's the gap? What do I want to do about it? No drama, no self-flagellation, just information and choice. There's a deeper layer to this. The weekly review is also where you maintain trust with yourself. Remember, your brain is watching, evaluating whether your system is trustworthy. If you capture things but never review them, your brain knows. It knows the system is a graveyard. It knows things go in but don't come out. It knows you can't be trusted to look at what you've collected. So it stops letting go. It keeps remembering. It keeps reminding. But if you review regularly, if your brain sees you consistently looking at what you've captured, processing what needs processing, acting on what needs acting, it starts to trust. It starts to believe that the external system actually works. And then it starts to let go. This is why the weekly review is non-negotiable. It's not optional maintenance. It's the heartbeat of the entire system. Without it, everything else decays. With it, everything else thrives. But even with a perfect system and a perfect review process, there's still one more piece. You still have to actually do the work. You still have to engage. Soft music transitions. Chapter 7, Engage. Intense, focused music. You're in a meeting. Your laptop is open. Your phone is face up on the table, notifications are on. Someone is talking, you're half listening. Your eyes keep drifting to your screen, to your phone, to the notification that just appeared. You tell yourself you're multitasking. You're not. You're context switching, rapidly, violently. And every switch leaves residue. Attention residue. Part of your mind stays with the previous task, even as you try to focus on the new one, so you're never fully anywhere, you're always partially somewhere else. Research by Sophie Leary at the University of Washington found that when people switch between tasks, a significant portion of their cognitive capacity remains occupied by the previous task. Not for a few seconds, for minutes, sometimes longer. And if the previous task was unfinished, the residue is even stronger. This is why multitasking is a lie. Not a harmless lie, a costly one. Every time you check your phone during a conversation, you're not just being rude. You're degrading the quality of your attention for both tasks. Every time you have your email open while you work, you're not just being available. You're ensuring that neither activity gets your full capacity. Every time you quickly respond to a text during a meeting, you're not just being efficient. You're making sure you miss something important in both places. Multitasking doesn't multiply your productivity, it divides it. But here's the deeper problem. Multitasking isn't just inefficient, it's psychologically violent. It trains your brain to be fragmented, to expect interruption, to seek distraction. Over time, your brain loses the capacity for deep focus, for sustained attention, for being fully present in one thing. And this loss is catastrophic. Because the most meaningful experiences in life require depth, they require presence, they require you to be fully there. A deep conversation, a creative breakthrough, a moment of genuine connection, a state of flow. None of these are possible when you're fragmented. None of these are possible when part of you is always somewhere else. None of these are possible when your attention is divided across 5 open loops and 3 devices. So how do you engage properly? You trust your system. This is the paradox at the heart of everything we've discussed. The only way to be fully present in what you're doing right now is to be completely confident that everything else is handled. If you know that your system has captured everything, that your weekly review will surface anything that needs attention, that your calendar will remind you of time-specific commitments, that your next actions list will be there when you're ready, then you can let go. You can be fully in this conversation, fully in this task, fully in this moment. Because there's nothing else you should be doing right now. This is the state that psychologists call flow. Complete absorption in an activity, time disappears, self-consciousness vanishes, performance peaks. Flow doesn't happen by accident. It happens when the conditions are right. And one of the most important conditions is the absence of competing demands on your attention. If part of your mind is worrying about the email you need to send, you're not in flow. If part of your mind is remembering the call you need to make, you're not in flow. If part of your mind is monitoring your phone for notifications, you're not in flow. Flow requires trust. Trust that everything else is handled. Trust that you'll be reminded at the right time. Trust that nothing will fall through the cracks. And that trust comes from a system that works. Not just theoretically, Not just when you set it up, but every day, every week, consistently, reliably. This is why the entire system matters. Capture, clarify, organize, reflect, engage. Each step builds trust for the next. Capture builds trust that nothing is forgotten. Clarify builds trust that everything is actionable. Organize builds trust that everything is findable. Reflect builds trust that the system is current. And all of that trust enables engagement. Real engagement, deep engagement, the kind of engagement that makes life feel meaningful. But there's one more layer to this. Engagement isn't just about focus, it's about choice. At any given moment, you have a list of possible next actions, in different contexts, for different projects, with different energy requirements. The art of engagement is choosing the right one. Not the most urgent, not the most important, the most appropriate. Given your current context, your current energy, your current priorities. This requires something that most people have never developed. Intuitive judgment about your own state. The ability to ask, what do I actually have the capacity for right now? Not what should I do, not what's most important. What can I actually do well right now? Sometimes the answer is deep work. Sometimes it's administrative tasks. Sometimes it's a conversation. Sometimes it's rest. And the person who can answer this question honestly is the person who can engage fully. Because they're not fighting themselves. They're aligned. Their actions match their capacity. Their choices match their context. Their engagement matches their energy. This is the ultimate goal. Not to do more, not to be more productive. To be fully where you are. Fully present, fully engaged, fully alive. But to get there, we need to understand something about the architecture of our commitments. We need to understand projects. Soft music transitions. Chapter 8 projects. Architectural building music. How many projects do you have active right now? Take a guess. 5, 10, 15. Now double it. Then double it again. You're probably getting close. Most people dramatically underestimate their active project load. They think in terms of big official projects, work assignments, major initiatives. But a project is anything that requires more than one action to complete. Get car fixed is a project. Plan birthday dinner is a project. Research new laptop is a project. Fix relationship with brother is a project. When you count them all, most people have 30 to 50 active projects at any given time. Some have more. And each one is an open loop. Each one is consuming mental energy. Each one is creating ambient stress. Even if you're not actively working on it, even if you've forgotten about it, even if it's buried under more urgent things. Your brain remembers. This is why having a complete projects list is so powerful. Not because it helps you do more, but because it helps you see what you're already doing. Most people have no idea how many commitments they've made. They're running on autopilot, saying yes to things, starting things, promising things, without any awareness of the total load. And then they wonder why they feel overwhelmed. The projects list is a mirror. It shows you the full scope of your commitments, the full weight of your intentions, the full complexity of your life. And looking into that mirror can be uncomfortable. Because you might discover that you've overcommitted, that you've taken on too much, that you've said yes to things you don't actually want to do. But you might also discover something else. You might discover that some of your stress comes from projects you've never actually defined. Vague obligations, half-formed intentions, clouds of anxiety with no clear shape. Fix the house isn't a project, it's a category of potential projects. Paint the living room is a project. Fix the leaky faucet is a project. Replace the broken window is a project. When you define your projects with clarity, when you give them specific names and specific outcomes, they become manageable. When they stay vague, they become monsters. There's a psychological principle here. Ambiguity creates anxiety. The more clearly you can define what you're trying to achieve, the less stressed you'll feel about achieving it. This seems counterintuitive. You'd think that seeing the full scope of a project would make it feel bigger, more overwhelming. But the opposite is true. Vague projects feel infinite. Defined projects feel finite. Get in shape feels infinite. Run a 5K in under 30 minutes by November feels finite. Fix career feels infinite. Get promoted to senior role by Q3 feels finite. Be happier feels infinite. Schedule 3 social activities per week feels finite. Specificity creates boundaries. And boundaries create psychological safety. When you know exactly what done looks like, you know when you've arrived. But there's another dimension to projects. Not all projects are created equal. Some are yours, some are inherited, some are assumed, some are imaginary. The weekly review is where you sort this out. Is this project still relevant? Is it still mine to handle? Do I still want to do it? Is there a better person for this? These questions seem simple. They're not. Because they force you to confront your own choices. To admit that you took on something you shouldn't have. To acknowledge that you've been avoiding something you need to face. To recognize that your priorities have shifted and some projects no longer matter. This is emotional labor. And most people avoid it. But the person who does this labor, who regularly reviews their projects with honesty and courage, that person is in control. Not because they have fewer projects, but because they know what they have. They know what they're committed to. They know what they're avoiding. They know what they're pretending doesn't exist. And that knowledge is power. Every project on your list is a conversation you're having with your future self. I will handle this. I will complete this. I will make this happen. And every project you leave undefined is a promise you made that you can't keep. Because you can't keep a promise you never actually made. The projects list is where you make your promises real. Where you define what you actually intend to do. Where you give shape to your commitments. Where you create the architecture of your life. And once that architecture is clear, you can build. One action at a time. Soft music transitions. Chapter 9, the next action. Tense driving music. I'll do it later. 4 words. Probably the most expensive 4 words in the English language. Because later is a lie. Not always, not completely, but often enough that it should make you suspicious. When you say, I'll do it later, what you usually mean is, I don't want to do this now, and I'm hoping that future me will be more motivated than present me. But future you is not a different person. Future you is just you, with less time. The concept of later is a psychological trick we play on ourselves. It allows us to feel like we've made a decision without actually making a commitment. It gives us the illusion of responsibility without the burden of action. And it creates a special kind of open loop, the deferred loop, the loop that stays open indefinitely because later never arrives. This is why the next action is so powerful. Not the whole project, not the final outcome, just the very next physical action. The thing you could do right now if you chose to. Call dentist to schedule appointment. Google reviews for plumbers in my area. Ask Sarah if she's free Thursday evening. Download the application form. Each one is concrete, each one is doable, each one takes less than 5 minutes. And yet, most people never define them. Why? Because defining the next action means confronting the reality of the project. It means admitting that you actually have to do something, that it's not going to happen by itself, that no one is coming to save you. And that confrontation is uncomfortable. There's a deeper fear here. The fear that once you define the next action, you'll have to do it. And if you do it, you might fail. Or worse, you might succeed. And then you'd have to face the next action, and the next, until the project is complete. And then you'd have to ask the terrifying question, what now? Procrastination is often not about laziness. It's about fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of commitment, fear of change, fear of discovering that you're not the person who does this kind of thing. And the undefined next action is the perfect hiding place for this fear. As long as the project stays vague, as long as the next action stays undefined, you don't have to face any of this. You can just keep saying later. And your brain will keep reminding you, at 3 a.m. in the shower, during important conversations. Because it knows you're avoiding something, and it won't let you forget. The next action is an act of courage. It's the moment when you stop hiding behind vagueness and face the concrete reality of what needs to happen. It's small, it's specific, it's often trivial. But it's the difference between a project that moves and a project that stalls. There's a fascinating psychological phenomenon here. When you define the next action, even if you don't do it immediately, the project feels different. It feels possible. Because now you know exactly what you would do if you decided to start. There's no more mystery, no more ambiguity, no more vague dread. Just a clear, concrete step. And often, that's enough to get you moving. Because the hardest part of any project isn't the work. It's the starting. It's the transition from thinking to doing, from planning to acting, from intention to execution. The next action makes that transition concrete. It gives you a door to walk through, a threshold to cross. And once you cross it, momentum takes over. But there's an even deeper truth about the next action. It's not just about productivity. It's about integrity. Every undefined project is a broken promise to yourself. not because you failed to complete it, but because you never actually committed to completing it. You kept it vague, you kept it ambiguous, you kept it in the realm of someday and maybe and later. And your brain knows the difference. It knows when you've made a real commitment, and it knows when you're pretending. The next action is where pretending ends. It's where you say, this is real, this is happening, this is the very next thing I will do to move this forward. And that specificity is a form of self-respect. It's the practice of meaning what you say, of following through on your intentions, of being someone your future self can trust. Because trust isn't built on big promises. It's built on small actions. One next action at a time. One completed step at a time. One kept promise at a time. But not everything belongs in the realm of active projects. Some things belong to the future, to possibility, to someday. Soft music transitions. Chapter 10, The Someday Maybe. Wistful, dreamy music. Everyone has a drawer of deferred dreams. Not a real drawer, a mental one. The things you want to do someday, the experiences you want to have, the person you want to become. Learn French, write a novel, start a business, travel to Japan, get scuba certified, fix your relationship with your father, learn to cook properly, take up photography, volunteer at the shelter, read all the classics. These aren't trivial. They're the unlived lives whispering in the background of your mind. And most people handle them badly. They either pretend they don't exist, or they carry them as vague burdens, or they feel guilty for not doing them. None of these approaches work. The someday maybe list is different. It's not a graveyard for dead dreams. It's a garden for living ones. A place where possibilities can exist without the pressure of immediate action. Where you can honor your desires without committing to all of them at once. Here's how it works. You capture every dream, every aspiration, every wouldn't it be nice if. Not just the practical ones, not just the realistic ones, all of them. And you put them on a list. Not to do them, not yet, just to acknowledge them. To say, I see you, I haven't forgotten you, you're part of my life even if you're not part of my right now. This is psychologically profound. Because unacknowledged dreams create a specific kind of pain. The pain of possibility denied. Every dream you have but never acknowledge is a small death. A small abandonment of who you might be. And these small deaths accumulate. Over years, over decades. They create what psychologists call regret. Not the regret of things you tried and failed. The regret of things you never tried at all. The regret of dreams you let die without even naming them. The someday maybe list prevents this. Not by guaranteeing that you'll do everything, but by guaranteeing that you'll at least look at everything. That you'll review your dreams regularly, that you'll consider them honestly, that you'll decide which ones to pursue and which ones to release. And releasing a dream is not failure. It's clarity. It's the recognition that this particular dream no longer fits who you are, that your priorities have shifted, that your energy is better spent elsewhere. When you release a dream consciously, it stops haunting you. But when you ignore it, when you pretend it doesn't exist, it stays active. It stays in that mental drawer, whispering, creating vague dissatisfaction, making you feel like you're not living up to your potential. Even if you've actually made excellent choices. Even if you're exactly where you want to be. The someday maybe list is an act of psychological housekeeping. It's where you sort through your desires, where you decide what matters now and what matters later, where you give yourself permission to not do everything, while still honoring everything you might want to do. It's the difference between a life of unconscious denial and a life of conscious choice. And that difference is everything. But here's the thing about someday maybe. It only works if you review it. If you capture dreams and never look at them again, you've just created another graveyard. The weekly review is where you visit this garden. Where you walk through your dreams and ask, is anything ready to bloom? Is any dream ready to become a project? Have my circumstances changed? Has my energy shifted? Is now the time for something I deferred before? And sometimes the answer is yes. Sometimes a dream that wasn't possible 5 years ago is possible now. Sometimes a desire that felt frivolous before feels essential now. Sometimes the person you were couldn't do this, but the person you've become can. The someday maybe list is a conversation with your evolving self. It's where you check in with who you're becoming. Where you ask, what do I want now that I didn't want before? What can I do now that I couldn't do before? Who am I becoming and what does that person want? These are deep questions. And the someday maybe list is where you keep them alive. But there's a danger here. Some people use someday maybe as a way to avoid commitment. They put everything on the list. Nothing becomes a project, nothing gets done. The list becomes a fantasy, an escape from reality. A way to feel like you have dreams without actually pursuing any of them. This is the shadow side of someday maybe. The list only works if it's honest. If you regularly review it. If you regularly move things off it, either into active projects or into the trash. If you treat it as a dynamic space, not a static storage unit. Because dreams are alive. They grow, they change, they die. And your job is to tend to them. Not to chase every dream. But to know what your dreams are. To choose consciously which ones to pursue. And to let the others go with grace. This is the art of someday maybe. It's not about having more dreams. It's about having honest dreams. Dreams you've looked at, considered, decided upon. Not fantasies you hide from, but possibilities you embrace. And once you've embraced them, once you've captured them, clarified them, organized them, you need to build the habit of keeping them alive. Soft music transitions. Chapter 11, The Capture Habit. Rhythmic building music. Habits are the invisible architecture of daily life. You don't think about brushing your teeth. You don't decide to put on your seatbelt. You don't debate whether to check your phone when it buzzes. These things just happen. Because your brain has automated them. It has moved them from conscious decision-making to unconscious routine. And this automation is one of the brain's greatest powers. It frees up conscious attention for things that actually require thought. The capture habit is exactly this kind of automation. It's the practice of writing things down, immediately, automatically, without thinking. Every thought that contains a potential action, every piece of information that might be relevant later, every commitment, large or small. Captured instantly, without debate. This sounds simple, and it is. But simple doesn't mean easy. Because the capture habit requires you to change a fundamental behavior pattern. Most people don't capture things, they try to remember them. They hear something important and they think, I'll remember that. They have an idea and they think, I'll write it down later. They make a commitment and they think, I won't forget. And sometimes they're right. But often they're wrong. And even when they're right, the mental energy required to remember is enormous. The capture habit eliminates this. It replaces the exhausting work of remembering with the simple act of writing. But like any habit, it takes time to build. Researchers say it takes anywhere from 21 to 66 days to form a new habit. The capture habit is on the longer end, because it fights against a deeply ingrained pattern. The pattern of trusting your memory. Your brain doesn't want to let go. It has been remembering things for your entire life. It sees capture as a threat, as a sign that it's not needed anymore. So it resists. It tells you, you don't need to write that down, you'll remember. It tells you, this isn't important enough to capture. It tells you, you'll look silly writing everything down. These are lies. Your brain is defending its territory. But the territory it's defending is the very thing that's making you miserable. The constant remembering, the constant reminding, the constant low-grade anxiety of things you might have forgotten. The first 30 days of building the capture habit are the hardest. You'll forget to capture things. You'll remember later and feel frustrated. You'll question whether this is worth it. This is normal. Habit formation is not linear, it's messy. It involves failure and restart, forgetting and remembering. But if you persist, something shifts. Around day 30, you start to notice something. You reach for your capture tool without thinking. You hear something important, and your hand moves to your notebook before your conscious mind has even processed it. You have an idea, and you capture it before you can talk yourself out of it. The habit is forming, and your brain is starting to notice. By day 60, something remarkable happens. Your brain starts to trust the system. It sees that you're capturing everything, that nothing is falling through the cracks, that your external system is actually working. And slowly, reluctantly, it starts to let go. The 3 a.m. wake-ups become less frequent. The ambient anxiety starts to fade. The feeling of always having something you should be doing starts to soften. Not because you have less to do, but because you trust that it's all captured. This is neuroplasticity in action. Your brain is literally rewiring itself. It's shifting from a mode of constant vigilance to a mode of selective attention. From I must remember everything to "I can focus on right now because everything else is handled." But the capture habit only works if it's complete. If you capture most things but not all things, your brain will still worry about the things you missed. One missed capture is all it takes to break the trust. So you have to be relentless. You have to capture everything. The big and the small, the urgent and the trivial, the important and the silly. Everything. And you have to have your capture tool with you always. In your pocket, on your nightstand, in your car, at your desk. Because ideas don't wait for convenient moments. The capture habit is a practice of radical receptivity. It's the practice of being open to everything that comes into your awareness, not judging it, not filtering it, just capturing it. And trusting the system to sort it out later. This trust is everything. Because once you truly trust your capture system, your mind becomes free. Free to focus, free to create, free to be present. Free to be the powerful processor it was designed to be. Instead of the overloaded filing cabinet it became. But capture is just the beginning. Once you've captured everything, you need to do something with it. Soft music transitions. Chapter 12, The 2-Minute Rule. Energetic driving music. 2 minutes. That's the threshold. If something takes less than 2 minutes, do it now. Not later, not after you organize it, not after you put it on a list. Now. This rule seems arbitrary. It's not. 2 minutes is the approximate point where the administrative cost of tracking an item exceeds the cost of just doing it. Think about it. You get an email. It requires a 1-sentence response. If you don't respond now, you have to capture it, put it in your system, review it later, remember what it was about, open it again, read it again, then respond. Total time, probably more than 2 minutes. Or you could just respond now. 30 seconds, done, gone, never to be thought of again. The 2-minute rule is about efficiency. But it's about something deeper too. It's about momentum. Every small completion releases a small amount of dopamine. Every quick win builds a small amount of confidence. Every 2-minute action proves to yourself that you're someone who handles things. And these small proofs accumulate. They create an identity. Not the identity of someone who plans. The identity of someone who does. And that identity shift is transformative. Most people think procrastination is about big things. It's not. Procrastination is about the accumulation of small things that never get done. The email that sits for 3 days, the text that goes unanswered, the bill that gets paid late, the form that never gets filled out. Each one is small, trivial, barely worth mentioning. But together, they create a psychological weight. They create the feeling that you're behind. That you're not on top of things, that you're always catching up, that there's always something you should have done that you haven't done. This feeling is exhausting. And it's entirely avoidable. The 2-minute rule eliminates the accumulation. It handles the small things immediately, before they can pile up, before they can create weight, before they can become sources of ambient stress. It's like doing the dishes right after dinner, instead of letting them stack in the sink. Each individual dish is trivial, but the stack becomes overwhelming. Here's the psychology behind this. Incomplete tasks create what researchers call task tension. Your brain wants closure, it wants things finished, and until they are, it keeps them active in your working memory. The 2-minute rule provides immediate closure. It finishes the loop before your brain even has a chance to get attached to it. And that immediate closure is addictive. People who practice the 2-minute rule often report something unexpected. They start to enjoy it. They start to seek out 2-minute tasks. They start to get a small thrill from clearing things immediately. From seeing their inbox empty, their desk clear, their list short. This is the dopamine loop of completion. And it's one of the most powerful psychological tools available. But there's a trap here. Some people try to apply the 2-minute rule to everything. They spend their entire day doing 2-minute tasks. Responding to emails, answering texts, handling small requests. And they never get to the important work. The 2-minute rule is not a strategy for your whole day. It's a strategy for the edges. For the moments between bigger tasks, for the small items that cross your path, for the things that would otherwise become debris. It's a maintenance practice, not a primary practice. The key is to use it wisely. When you're processing your captured items, when you're clarifying what each thing is, ask yourself, will this take less than 2 minutes? If yes, do it now. If no, organize it for later. This simple filter prevents the accumulation of small tasks while preserving your time for big ones. It's elegant, it's efficient, and it's psychologically powerful. But the 2-minute rule has an even deeper benefit. It trains your brain to prefer completion over deferral. Most brains are trained to defer. I'll do it later, I'll handle it tomorrow, I'll get to it eventually. The 2-minute rule trains a different response. I'll do it now. This small shift in default behavior changes everything. It changes how you relate to your obligations. From burden to opportunity. From avoidance to engagement. From I have to I handle things. And that shift in identity. That shift from someone who plans to someone who does. That's the real power of the 2-minute rule. Soft music transitions. Chapter 13, Outcome Focusing. Contemplative, slightly melancholic music. There's a person you haven't met yet. But you will. In 5 years, in 10, in 20. That person is your future self. And right now, you're making decisions for them. Whether you realize it or not. Every commitment you make, every project you start, every promise you break. You're shaping that person's life. Here's the problem. Most people are terrible at predicting what their future self will want. They make commitments in the optimism of Monday morning that their Friday evening self resents. They take on projects in January that their July self is drowning under. They promise things to people that their future self doesn't have the capacity to deliver. And then they wonder why they feel overwhelmed. Psychologists call this future self-continuity. It's the degree to which you feel connected to your future self. People with high future self-continuity make better long-term decisions. They save more money. They exercise more regularly. They avoid procrastination. People with low future self-continuity treat their future self like a stranger. Someone they don't really care about. Someone whose problems are not their problems. Outcome focusing is the practice of strengthening this connection. It's the practice of making decisions as if you actually care about that future person. As if their well-being matters to you. Because it does. Here's how it works. For every project on your list, you define the desired outcome. Not just what you're doing, what you're trying to achieve. Organize garage is an activity. Have a functional garage where I can park my car and find any tool in under 60 seconds is an outcome. Get better at public speaking is vague. Be able to deliver a 20-minute presentation without notes and receive positive feedback is specific. The outcome is what you're actually trying to create. And defining it clearly does something powerful. It gives your brain a target. A clear picture of what done looks like. And brains love targets. When you have a clear outcome, your brain starts working toward it automatically. It starts noticing opportunities, making connections, generating ideas. Even when you're not consciously thinking about the project. This is the power of clear intention. But there's a deeper layer. The outcome you choose shapes the person you become. Not just in terms of what you achieve, in terms of who you are. Every project is a vote for a particular identity. Run a marathon is a vote for I am an athlete. Write a book is a vote for I am a writer. Start a business is a vote for I am an entrepreneur. Learn to meditate is a vote for I am someone who prioritizes mental health. These votes accumulate. They shape your self-concept. And your self-concept shapes your behavior. This is why outcome focusing is so important. Not because it helps you achieve more. Because it helps you become who you want to be. It aligns your daily actions with your deeper values. It connects your present self with your future self. It creates continuity across time. But there's a danger here. Some people get so focused on outcomes that they lose sight of the present. They become so obsessed with future achievements that they can't enjoy where they are. This is the shadow side of outcome focusing. The goal is not to live in the future. The goal is to let the future inform the present. To make choices today that your future self will thank you for. While still being fully present in today. This is the balance. And it's a delicate one. Too much focus on the future, and you miss your life. Too much focus on the present, and you sacrifice your future. Outcome focusing helps you find the middle path. By defining what you want to create, you can make better choices about what to do right now. You can ask, is this action moving me toward my desired outcome? If yes, keep going. If no, stop. This simple filter eliminates enormous amounts of wasted effort. It keeps you aligned. But alignment requires regular review. Your desired outcomes change. What mattered to you 5 years ago might not matter now. And what matters now might not matter in 5 years. The weekly review is where you check this alignment. Where you ask, are my projects still moving me toward outcomes I actually want? Have my desired outcomes changed? Am I becoming the person I want to be? These are not productivity questions. They are existential questions. And they deserve your full attention. Because the person you're becoming is the most important project of all. Soft music transitions. Chapter 14, GTD and Your Brain. Scientific Cerebral Music. David Allen wrote the first edition of this book in 2001. Before the neuroscience had caught up. Before we had fMRI studies and cognitive load research and attention residue experiments. He built the system based on observation, on intuition, on decades of working with real people in real organizations. And then the science caught up. And it confirmed almost everything he had discovered. Not because he was psychic. Because he was paying attention. Let's look at what neuroscience has revealed. Your brain has a limited working memory capacity. We now know this capacity is approximately 4 items. Not 7, as was previously believed. 4. And yet most people try to hold dozens, sometimes hundreds, of commitments in their conscious awareness. Cognitive load theory tells us what happens when you exceed working memory capacity. Performance degrades. Decision-making becomes poorer. Creativity diminishes. Stress increases. And you don't even realize it's happening. This is why externalization works. When you move information out of your head and into a trusted system, you free up working memory. You reduce cognitive load. You create space for the things that actually require conscious processing. Then there's attention residue. Sophie Leroy's research at the University of Washington showed that when people switch between tasks, part of their attention stays with the previous task, especially if that task was unfinished. This residue impairs performance on the new task. It creates a kind of cognitive drag. And in modern life, we're constantly switching. Email to meeting to text to work to social media to conversation to email again. Each switch leaves residue. Each residue degrades our capacity until we're operating at a fraction of our potential. The GTD system addresses this directly. By capturing everything, you reduce the number of unfinished loops. By clarifying next actions, you create closure on items that would otherwise stay open. By organizing by context, you reduce unnecessary switching. By reviewing weekly, you maintain trust in the system. By engaging fully, you minimize attention residue. Then there's the default mode network. This is the brain network that activates when you're not focused on a specific task. When you're daydreaming, wandering, ruminating. Research shows that an overactive default mode network is associated with anxiety, depression, and stress. And what activates the default mode network? Unresolved concerns, open loops, ambiguous commitments, all the things that GTD is designed to eliminate. When you have a trusted system, when you know everything is captured and processed and organized, your default mode network quiets down. Not completely, not permanently, but significantly. You experience less rumination, less worry, less 3 a.m. anxiety. Then there's the research on decision fatigue. Roy Baumeister and his colleagues found that willpower and decision-making capacity are finite resources. They get depleted with use. Every decision you make, no matter how small, uses up some of this capacity. The GTD system reduces decision fatigue by pre-deciding. When you clarify your next actions in advance, when you organize them by context, you eliminate the need to decide what to do in the moment. You just look at your list and choose. The decision has already been made. This is why people who practice GTD report feeling less mentally exhausted. Not because they're doing less, because they're deciding less. The decisions happen during the weekly review, during the clarify stage, during the organize stage. Not during the moment of action. And this preserves precious cognitive resources for what actually matters. Then there's the research on flow states. Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi's work on flow showed that the optimal state of human experience requires complete absorption in an activity. No distractions, no competing concerns, just total engagement. Flow requires trust. Trust that nothing else needs your attention right now. Trust that your system will remind you of anything important later. Trust that you can be fully present without something falling through the cracks. This is exactly what a trusted GTD system provides. The neuroscience is clear. Your brain was not designed to hold dozens of open loops. Your brain was not designed to constantly switch between tasks. Your brain was not designed to remember hundreds of commitments. Your brain was designed to focus deeply on one thing at a time. To be fully present. To engage completely. And the GTD system is simply a way of creating the external conditions that allow your brain to do what it was designed to do. Not by changing your brain, by changing your environment, by building a system your brain can trust, so it can finally let go. Soft music transitions. Chapter 15, The Path of Mastery. Transcendent, spacious music. There's a paradox at the heart of this entire system. The goal is not to do more. The goal is to be more present. The goal is not to be more productive. The goal is to be more free. The goal is not to get everything done. The goal is to stop worrying about everything. This is the path of mastery. And it's not a destination. It's a practice. A lifelong practice of showing up, of doing the work, of maintaining the system, of reviewing, of clarifying, of capturing. Meet James. James has been practicing GTD for 12 years. He's not perfect. He still forgets to capture sometimes. He still misses weekly reviews occasionally. He still has weeks where everything falls apart. But something has shifted. James doesn't have more free time than other people. He has more full time. More moments where he's completely there. Completely present, completely engaged, completely alive. When James is in a conversation, he's in the conversation. Not thinking about his to-do list, not checking his phone, not planning what he's going to say next. Just listening, just being, just present. When James is working on a project, he's working on the project. Not checking email, not responding to notifications, not worrying about what he's forgetting. Just creating, just focusing, just flowing. When James is with his family, he's with his family. Not mentally at work, not planning tomorrow, not checking his phone under the table. Just being a father, just being a husband, just being there. This is what mastery looks like. Not perfection. Presence. The ability to be fully where you are. Fully with who you're with. Fully in what you're doing. Not because your life is simple, but because your system is trusted. James still has the same number of commitments as everyone else. He still has work projects and family obligations and social commitments and personal goals. He still has stress, still has challenges, still has moments of overwhelm. But the ambient anxiety is gone. The constant background worry that he's forgetting something. The 3 a.m. wake-ups. The feeling of always being behind. The sense that there's something he should be doing that he's not doing. Gone. Not because he's doing more. Because he's doing what he's doing fully. This is the ultimate paradox. The person who trusts their system completely doesn't need to think about their system. It becomes invisible. Like breathing. Like walking. Something that happens automatically. Something that supports you without demanding attention. This is the highest level of mastery. When the system is so integrated into your life that you forget it's there. When capture is automatic, when clarification is natural, when organization is effortless, when review is ritual, when engagement is complete. When productivity becomes presence. But this level doesn't come quickly. It comes through years of practice. Through falling off and getting back on. Through forgetting and remembering. Through failure and persistence. Through the slow, unglamorous work of showing up. There's a concept in martial arts called shuhari. It describes 3 stages of mastery. Shu, follow the rules. Ha, break the rules. Rai, be the rules. Most people are in the Shu stage. They're learning the system, following the steps, trying to get it right. This is good, this is necessary. Some people reach the Ha stage. They understand the principles deeply enough to adapt them. To modify the system to fit their unique life. To break the rules in ways that serve them. Few people reach the Rai stage. where the system has become so internalized that it no longer feels like a system. It just feels like how they live. The principles have become instincts. The practices have become habits. The system has become the person. This is the path of mastery, and it's available to anyone willing to walk it. Not because it's easy, but because it's worth it. Because on the other side of the practice, on the other side of the discipline, on the other side of the system, is something rare and precious. A mind that is free. A mind that is clear. A mind that is present. A mind that can give its full attention to whatever is in front of it. This is what you're chasing. Not more done. More here. More now. More you. And it's possible. It really is. One capture at a time. One clarification at a time. One action at a time. 1 week at a time. 1 year at a time. Until one day, you realize you're already there. Soft music swells. Outro the empty mind. Sparse contemplative music. Imagine a mind with nothing in it except what it's doing right now. Not because life is simple. Not because there are no obligations. Not because there are no challenges. But because everything else is handled. Everything is captured. Everything is clarified. Everything is organized. Everything is reviewed. Everything is trusted. And so the mind is free. Free to focus. Free to create. Free to love. Free to be present. Free to be fully alive. This is what you're chasing. Not productivity. Not efficiency. Not getting more done. Freedom. The freedom of a mind that is not carrying the weight of 100 unfinished commitments. The freedom of a mind that trusts itself. The freedom of a mind that can be fully where it is. This freedom is not a fantasy. It's not reserved for monks or CEOs or people with perfect lives. It's available to anyone willing to do the work. The work of capture. The work of clarify. The work of organize. The work of reflect. The work of engage. Each step is simple. None of them are easy. But together, they create something extraordinary. A life where you're not constantly behind. A life where you're not constantly worried. A life where you're not constantly distracted. A life where you can actually be where you are. The question is, what would you do with a mind that was actually free? What would you create? Who would you be? How would you love? What would you build? The system we've explored in this documentary. It's not really about getting things done. It's about getting your mind back. It's about reclaiming the most precious resource you have. Your attention. Your presence. Your life. And it starts with one simple act. Writing something down. Capturing one open loop. Making one thing explicit that was implicit. Taking one step toward clarity. From there, everything else follows. Not perfectly. Not immediately. But inevitably. If you keep going. So here's my question to you. What's the one thing? The one open loop? The one commitment? The one project that you've been carrying in your head, that you're ready to capture right now? Write it down. Get it out of your head. And see what happens. See what it feels like to have one less thing spinning in your mind. One less ghost. One less weight. One step closer to free. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Now go capture something.